Welcome to Sage 500 Credit Card ERP Credit Card Processing with Sage Payment Solutions. Today's demonstration will show you how to get started with credit card processing in Sage 500 ERP, how to process an invoice with a credit card payment and print a receipt, as well as how to process a cash receipt using a credit card, process a sales order from taking the order through shipment, and pre-authorization through post-authorization. We'll also show you how to settle transactions at the end of the day and see what's been processed within Sage 500 ERP. So let's get started. For today's demonstration, I'll be using the 2013 release of Sage 500 ERP. Your version may differ slightly, but the basic principles should remain pretty consistent. The first thing we need to do is make certain credit card processing is turned on. In order to do that, we go to System Manager, Maintenance, Maintain Companies. Once we're here, we pull up the company code where we want to enable credit card processing, and then click on the Activate Modules button. This takes us to the Activate Modules task. Module number 7 is credit card processing. If the checkbox is not enabled, we'll click on the checkbox here to do so. Next, we click on the Proceed button at the top of the screen. A warning appears reminding us that we don't want to activate a module unless we plan to purchase it within 45 days. We can click OK on that warning and the activation process proceeds. If this were the first time we were setting up credit card processing, there's another screen that comes up asking for database encryption key information. This information is user-defined, in other words, unique to your installation. It is vital that you take a screenshot of the information you enter on that screen and store it in a secure location. If ever the database is moved, you need to have this information to continue processing credit cards. You should now see a credit card in your module listing. For the next step in the process, we need to go to Credit Card, Maintenance, Maintain Credit Card Processor Account. There are a few important things to note here. Under Defaults, you want to set the minimum number of days to retain credit card transaction information. This only applies to completed transaction information, but it prevents purge utilities from inadvertently removing credit card transactions before they become obsolete. Under Accounts, you designate the bank account associated with the merchant processor account, basically telling the system where to deposit the funds from credit cards and where they're going to show up. Under Billing, you're setting up the conditions under which you want to hold up an order if a credit card transaction fails. You're determining here whether you want to completely hold the shipment and at what stage, or complete the shipment but issue a billing invoice instead. And you're setting a dollar amount under which you don't care and you'll just ship it anyway. Then, of course, you have to enter your merchant ID and merchant key, which you will have received from Sage Payment Solutions once you signed up for your merchant account. Once you're done, click the Test Connection button that you see up at the top of the screen to make certain that you're connected. Next, on this same menu, or from the Common Information menu, we need to set up at least one tender type for credit cards. And then at last, we're ready to start setting up credit cards for customers. There are a number of ways and places where you can enter this information, but initially you may want to start on the customer record. From Accounts Receivable, go to Maintenance, and then Maintain Customers. and pull up a customer that you want to enter credit card information for. Then you just click on the credit cards button. The Maintain Credit Card window opens, and in this window we can enter a nickname for the card, something that'll be easy for us to remember, though we can always look it up, and all of the associated information for that card. Please note that even though we may have set things up to store credit card information, nothing is stored locally. All confidential information is stored in the Sage Exchange vault. Credit card numbers are encrypted, of course, except for the last 4 digits. If your system is not set up to store credit card data, you'll not have the ability to enter this information and store it. It will have to be entered each time you take a credit card transaction. Whether or not you've retained credit card data, if you've opted to allow for upcharges, you have the ability to set up by individual customer the amount or percent that will be allowed for the upcharges. So what is an upcharge? Suppose you have a pre-authorized card. You've pre-authorized a card for $100 during the creation of a sales order. Upcharges are set to allow 10%. Shipping charges are added, totaling $7.50, making the total order $107.50. The post-authorization is successful because the upcharge is within the allowable limit. If, on the other hand, the freight amount were $22.50, making the total $122.50, the post-authorization would fail due to the upcharge exceeding the established amount. Congratulations! You've now successfully set up credit card processing. Processing credit card transactions. In order to make things easier for you, we've included some interactive visual process flows that walk you through various processes. We'll leverage a couple of these today. From the Home menu, we can expand the Visual Process Flows folder. Then we double-click on credit card to see the process flow. This is a graphical representation of the workflow associated with credit card processing. You'll note several dots along the flow. These dots represent various tasks in Sage 500 ERP and are in fact linked to those tasks. Additionally, you see related icons for reports and inquiries. These two are linked to the associated tasks. So let's get going. First, we'll take a look at processing an AR invoice with a credit card payment. We can either click on the dot, or node as it's sometimes called, on the visual process flow, or we could use the menu option, Accounts Receivable, Activities, Process Invoices. Next, we'll select or create a batch. I already have a batch out here, so I'm just going to go ahead and select that batch. And then we could either select recurring invoices if we wanted to generate an invoice from a recurring invoice, or we could go into Enter Invoices to enter an invoice. For today's demonstration purposes, we're going to go into Enter Invoice and enter a new invoice. We'll click on the next number button, put in our customer, put in our item, of installation services, click on OK, and then go over to our totals. You can see that we've got got our invoice in here now. So in order to get to credit card processing, what we're going to do is click on the detail button. When we click on detail, it takes us into this down payment screen, at which point we can put in a payment reference. We'll just put in today's date. Then we'll click on the Enter Credit Card button, which takes us to the credit card transactions screen. At this point, we could pull in the credit card that we've already set up for this customer. And then we'll note that over here on the left-hand side of this screen, we've got two buttons. Those two buttons are sale and voice authorization. Because this is an AR invoice and we're collecting the funds at the time that we're processing the invoice, we're going to go ahead and click on the sale button. When we do that, it opens up the Sage Exchange window. You'll see here that the Sage Payment Solutions window is open and the credit card reference is here, last four digits of the credit card, along with the expiration information. So we'll just click on the next button and we can see the billing information, verify that all that information is correct, and then click on Submit. Down here in the bottom of the window, we can see that now we have a successful transaction. It says that it was processed, and here's the response code. It was approved, so we've processed that credit card transaction. At that point, we can close this window. All of that information was brought back over to this window as well. Go ahead and close that, and then we can save this invoice. But let's suppose that the customer wanted a copy of that invoice as a receipt. Maybe they're standing at the counter and they want a copy of that invoice. So there's a couple of ways that we can get that for them. One is we can just go in here and click on this Receipts button. Takes us to a window where we can print a credit card receipt. Now we're just going to preview it to the screen so that you can see what it looks like, but you could print it out to any printer, whether it's at the desk or the sales counter, or you could print it to PDF and email it if that is an alternative method that you wanted to use. And here's your credit card receipt. Because this is a crystal form, you could go in and modify it, put your logo, your letterhead, whatever you wanted to do to personalize the credit card receipt. But the customer then has a receipt indicating that they've in fact paid this invoice with this credit card, so there's no outstanding balance. The second kind of transactions that we can process with credit cards in Sage 500 ARP is AR cash receipts. So let's take a look at that next. Again, we simply click on the node to open the task, or we could go to Accounts Receivable Activities, Process Cash Receipts. Remember, you can also just drag and drop the menu item to your My Tasks menu if that's what you do on a regular basis. Okay, so now we're in the Process Cash Receipts batch window. We can, again, either create a new batch, or we can open an existing batch. We'll click on the next number button to create a new batch, and then click on Enter Cash Receipts. Once the Enter Cash Receipts window opens, we'll make sure that the payment type is set to customer payment. We'll enter our customer.
This one.
And again, we're going to use that same customer.
Yeah, I guess.
We need to put a payment reference in here.
So, no. You had that.
In this particular case, this customer has an unapplied payment balance. We're just going to say OK through that message. And similar to what we saw before, on the deposits window, we have an Enter Credit Card button. So once again, if we press that button, here's that ever familiar screen. We can enter the account nickname. And there's all that credit card information that came in. And once again, we still have the sale and voice authorization options, plus the manual transactions.
Yeah, basically half this.
So let's take a second and talk about those other options. A cash receipt is processed as a sale because, in fact, from the credit card processing standpoint, we're collecting funds, so therefore, as far as the credit card company knows, it's processed as a sale. We then are going to apply that money that we've collected from the credit card to the invoices, but that's all within Sage 500. As far as the credit card company knows, it's a new sale. The other options that are available at this point are voice authorization and manual transaction. If we click on manual transaction, it opens up some other fields. And the reason that we would ever want to do that is, as we all know, when we're in business, sometimes things just don't go the way we want them to. Maybe the power's down, or the internet connectivity's down. You've got power, but you don't have internet connectivity. Or your workstation can't get a connection to the processor directly from within Sage 500. For whatever reason, you may need to go directly to Sage Payment Solutions and process the transaction directly on their terminal. You can do that by going directly to the Sage Exchange window. I'm not going to demonstrate that right now, but you could do that. The difference would be that once you finally got that everything back online and you had the response code and all of that information, you'd have to come in here, click on the manual transaction button, and manually enter the response code, the response message, and reference ID, so that all of that information could be tied back to the transaction in Sage Payment Solutions. We're not going to process one of those, but I did want to explain what that did. The other button here is voice authorization. There are also times when you're taking your credit card and you get a message back from the processor saying, must call processor. And then you have to pick up the phone and call the processor and get a voice authorization. If that ever is the case and you need to do that, if you click on the voice authorization button, then again you can go in and manually enter the voice authorization information from directly while you're on the phone with the person who's giving you that authorization, again tying all of those transactions together within Sage 500. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to use sale, and similar to what we saw before, see there, I messed up. We have to tell it how much we're going to process. So let's process a payment for $1,250. And we'll go ahead and click on sale. Once again, we see that Sage Payment Solutions window. Click on next. We can verify, in fact, that the information here is correct. And if it's incorrect for some reason, maybe they've moved or the phone number has changed, you can always go into these fields that are not grayed out and update the information here. You do need to realize, however, that any edits that you make on this screen do not populate back into Sage 500. If you make the change in Sage 500, those changes will flow through to Sage Payment Solutions, but it's not a two-way edit. So if we go ahead and click on Submit, again, these little buttons up here tell us that it's processing, and we get a response back that tells us that that sale transaction was successful. We can once again close this window and close this window, close and save this window, except that we would want to go in and apply it. So the next step would be to come in here and find invoices that we wanted to apply it to. And we'll apply it to this invoice. Would help if I typed it right. And we'll click OK. Click on the little green button. And we're now finished with that screen. We'll come back out here. I actually don't want to do that. I want to put it to the screen so we can see what's going on. Registers and our journals. And we're done. The third type of transaction we want to talk about today is sales order transactions. So again, if we click on the sales order visual process flow, we can see that sales order, pick, pack, and ship has its own process flow with several different options on how to get from one end to the other. We're going to take one of the more complex methods of walking through this process, just so that we can make sure that we cover all the different ways that credit card can interact with this process. The first step in this process flow is to enter sales orders. So we're going to click on that button or that node and enter a new sales order. So once again, we're going to use our favorite customer here. Items in here, or in this case I think we'll just use one. And let's sell a couple of cases or a couple of boxes of those floppy disks. Click on that ever familiar credit card button. And here we see again our familiar credit card transaction screen. Use our same saved credit card. First we have to put in a payment reference. Now we'll put on our nickname so it pulls in you'll note that over here we've got a new button that's lit up called pre-auth. So a pre-auth is a pre-authorization. We can think of a pre-authorization as sort of a hold against the cardholder's credit balance in anticipation of a shipment. So pre-authorizations are usually valid for a limited number of days before they expire, and the amount is compared to the ending invoice to complete the transaction. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. When we click on the pre-auth button, the information is sent to the processor for approval, just like a sale. The difference is that instead of the funds being captured or transferred, instead they're just simply reserved with a reference number for the later transfer or capture of funds. So we see the same screens with the capture of the information and all of the billing information. And when we click on submit, the authorization comes back, and what we see here is an approval, but instead of the kind of approval that we saw before, we see this authorization, which just says, yes, these funds are available, and here's a reference ID for the hold on those funds, but we don't have those funds yet. Go ahead and close out of this window. And then we can save and close the sales order. If we close this window, you see on the process flow here that we could print and acknowledge the sales order. We're not going to go into that step, but we are going to skip over here and create our pick list. So we're going to select the order for customer. We're not going to do transfers. We're just going to do sales orders. Click on select. Looks like we got way more than what we wanted, so we're going to deselect and go back and pick out our sales order number so we just get the one that we want. So for that, we'll go back over here to sales order, activities, enter sales orders and quotes. Click on this last button. And there's our order that we pulled up. We'll make note of the order number. It's number 308. So now we can go back to our process flow. Going to create pick list. Select orders. Sales order contains 308. Now we have the sales order that we want. We don't want transfers. Look at the sales orders, make sure we've got the right one, which we do. We're shipping from Rialto. We'll not need to keep track and remember that. And we'll just go ahead and proceed. Okay. Then our next task is we can go in and confirm pick list. That next step is in fact optional, but we'll go into it anyway. dealing with transfers, we're just dealing with sales orders. So we've got 308, and it looks like 215 was sitting out there as well. So we'll go ahead and confirm both of those. We're going to auto distribute those 3 lines. Make sure we've got everything in good shape here. We're not seeing any warnings or lot or serial numbers that we need to worry about. Next we'll go to generate shipments. For Rialto, because that's where we're shipping from. Generated the 2 shipments we were expecting. Now at this point we can go into edit shipments either from the process flow, or we could go into sales order activities, edit shipments, and pull up the shipment that we're looking for. So we'll use our little shortcut here and go to the last shipment. That one happens to be Blackwell. We don't want that one, so we'll go back here to this one for Algar, or Alicia garage doors. So it's possible we entered the credit card for Alicia garage doors at the sales order point, but it's possible that perhaps they gave us a call between the time that we processed the sales order at the beginning and the time that we're now ready to pick, and said, oh, I didn't realize I don't want it on that card and I want it on this card. Or perhaps in the case of the other order that we picked, if Blackwell called and said, you know, instead of letting that order go through, I think what we want to do is pay it by credit card so that it doesn't hit our outstanding balance. In that case, what we can do is go in through the Enter Credit Cards button, put in a payment reference, see if they've got a credit card set up. Nope, doesn't look like they do. So we can create a credit card on the fly for a one-time payment. So we'll put in a new nickname. We'll call it Visa. And we'll put in the cardholder name. Select the credit card type. Got all of the information here for the address. That all seems to be correct. Click on the Save button. It's going to let us go out here and put in our card number. And submit. So what we're doing here is we're submitting this card number to the Sage Payment Solutions Sage Exchange Vault so that we can save that card for future use. And because we've got this credit card button here at Edit Shipments as well as at the beginning of the sales order, we can go ahead and process either a sale or a pre-authorization for this card for this customer on this shipment. So we're going to do a pre-authorization again for the total amount of this order. So we'll move this over here so we can see how much this order is. I think it was $136 or something. Close out of here, come back in. That's $136 and whatever change. So go back into credit cards. Saved our Visa card. We're going to put it in for $136. And we're going to do our pre-authorization. And we've got our authorization. Everything's good. Okay. There's also another option here that's called Enter Payments. If we go into the Enter Payments button, we also have the ability, we have another option to enter credit cards using this Enter Credit Card button, similar to what we saw when we were processing the AR invoice. Works the same way, goes through the same screens. But so either way, we can get in here. If you click on this Edit Credit Card button after you put in a reference, and an amount, takes you out to the same screen. We're not going to go ahead with that. We're going to cancel out of that window because we already processed the other one. But you could, in fact, come in at it from either way. So let's go ahead and save those changes to that order and come back out of that. So we said earlier that the pre-authorization only reserves the funds. What we need to complete the transfer of the funds is a post-authorization. The post-authorization goes out and captures the funds and completes the transaction, matches the pre-authorized amount to the full invoice amount of the shipment, and completes that transaction so that the customer, in fact, so that you, in fact, get your funds. The first way to make that happen, there's 3 different ways to make it happen. The first way, without committing or posting the sales order transaction, is to process credit cards. The way that you can get to that particular task is from either the credit card menu or, again, from the credit card process flow. If you go into Activities, you can click on Process Credit Cards and select the shipments that you want to go ahead and process. You see down here that we've got 3 shipments that are sitting there waiting for us to complete the credit card processing. One from an earlier day and the 2 that we processed today. Or we can go in through the sales order workflow or through the sales order menu and either commit the sales order or post the sales order transactions, both of which submit the sales order, the last option, of course, post the sales order as well. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to use the post sales order option. But before we do that, let's go back into that last shipment that we just worked with. Actually, the one before the last. So we're going to access the shipment for Algar. This guy right here. And if we pull up our record in accounts receivable for Algar, remember way back at the beginning we talked about the option that we had over here on defaults about credit card upcharges. We're going to say that we're going to allow 10% upcharge for Algar. And then we'll go back into edit shipments. Pull up that shipment. Okay, we've got 2 boxes. The total on that shipment is $600. We're going to put some freight in there. Put $10 for freight. Save the change. Okay. So now we're going to go over to post SO transactions. And we're not going to process customer returns. We're not going to process transfers. We're just going to do customer shipments. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with that. Oop, it says there's no data. Let's try that again. That we went ahead and did it and didn't realize that we did. Let's go see what we've got. Okay, looks like everything's processed. So far, there's been a lot of back and forth electronic traffic around these orders. But how are you going to get your money? Well, there's a couple things you need to do in order to make that happen. First of all, you need to go into credit card, again, either from the process flow or directly from the credit card menu, and go into settle credit card transactions. This screen pulls up transactions that have been processed for a date range. We're going to go ahead and set this back to last Friday just to make sure that we pick everything up. And then we're going to click on the refresh button. And it pulls in all of the items that have been processed through the processor since last Friday. And you can see the settlement dates. So this is when either it hit our bank account or when we anticipated it was going to, or we anticipate it's going to hit our bank account. So the next thing we need to do is to go over and see, we don't have any Sage reference IDs that are matching up there. So nothing that we've processed, we don't have anything to match up. But when we do have something to match up, we'll be able to click on the match, and then on the Sage Payment Solutions side, Sage Exchange will take care of the transfer of funds from the cardholder's account and bank into your account. On the Sage 500 side, once you do this here, then you would go into cash management and generate a deposit to record that in cash management so that you knew that those funds had been transferred in, so you can do a reconciliation at the end of the month. And that completes credit card processing in Sage 500 ERP with Sage Payment Solutions. Thank you for your time.